Hey, welcome to the worst intro in podcasting. My name is Dean. If you can't have fun with it, what can you do? Welcome back, Dean Blundell in his own seat. Really nice to be here, actually. I took a long break from podcasting to get my head straight and really enjoying it. Actually enjoying communicating again. Actually enjoying having conversations, real authentic conversations, like nothing to do with politics, very little to do with world events. I have turned off the news and I've started to invest myself in other things, and gives me great pleasure to have a guest today that I think feels the same way. I know we come at things from a different perspective, but where we align is in wellness and getting healthy and advocating for yourself and your mental and emotional well-being, transitioning into new life phases. Please welcome one of my favorite guys. He's just one of my favorite guys. He's one of those layered dudes who you're like, man, there's way more to Dan Carcillo than I thought there was. Please welcome to the show, Dan Carcillo, ladies and gentlemen, two-time Stanley Cup champion. And I believe you're 40 today. Is that correct? 40th
What's
birthday?
up, Dino?
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think we've hit the halfway mark. Unless, you follow Brian Johnson and you don't want to die.
Is that the dude that's like, he's so into trying to turn back the clock? He's like one of those genetic guys that's always putting out stuff like how to hack his body, life hack his body. So, and he's like 65, but he looks like he's 18. That dude.
Yeah, which is cool. I just think, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but my life is all about, we all know that the breath gets taken from us, and when we're done with the monkey suit. Nobody really knows when that time comes, but how can we live more fully now with the time that we have? And so from that perspective, I think he gives a lot of people hope. I just don't necessarily buy into the whole biohacking and all of the different things that so many people are trying to put in their body to feel well. Because if you exercise, you watch your diet, you got some good sleep habits, and you mix in natural plant medicine and fungi, you're going to feel really good. So.
Yeah. We'll get into that. Obviously, the transition that you've made, and coming up into your 40th year here. It's your birthday today. I didn't even know that. Dude, if I was you, I wouldn't have done a podcast on my fucking birthday. But good for you. I mean, thank you.
We gotta work. We gotta work.
We gotta keep it going,
dude. I called you. I'm like, man, it's been a minute since we've since we picked up the conversation. So let's pick it up.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. And when it comes to age, life hacks, this is the same guy, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's like putting out like, here's a supplement that I'm specifically taking this week for my penis, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the same guy?
For pretty much everything, yeah. He says he spends $2 to $3 million a year. I didn't know this, but I think he was the founder of Venmo. And so like he's caked up, right? And so okay. Then that whole thing, he was building this thing up, and then like most people do, which is fine, then you're going to turn around and sell to what story you're creating, right? And and that's definitely what he's doing now. He owns a whole host of different collagen proteins and peptides and hormone replacement. I'm very much in line with simplify. It's simple. It does not need to be complicated. This life doesn't need to be complicated. Find people that make you feel good, eat food that makes you feel good, get on a sleep routine that makes you feel good, take natural medicine that makes you feel good. And and then don't take this so seriously. Like, we got to laugh, we got to have fun. And don't be a choir boy. You can let the pendulum swing back and forth every now and again. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, you and I think align on those regards, right? And if anybody knows anything about your journey, going from a guy with the nickname Car Bomb, I'm sure you're sick of hearing it. A Twitter handle's Car Bomb. Watching you play in the NHL, winning a couple of cups. Watching you run roughshod, using your body as a cannon for 10 years in the NHL, and then the resulting, health and mental health and emotional health and physical health consequences that you've suffered, which we'll get into. But to your point, you're speaking from a perspective of what you've done to be able to fix yourself when you talk about simplifying it, plant-based medicine, exercising, sleeping, living that lifestyle. And you've backed it up by literally opening your entire life up to this being, your future when it comes to what you advocate for in the businesses that you're in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. I run these free webinars twice a week right now. We'll probably get into it a little bit more. And what we talk about there is just sharing your experience, strength, and hope. It's very similar to like what I learned in AA when I went through a couple opiate addictions in my career, completely over prescribed. But when people get up and they talk, there's something called qualifying yourself, right? Well, why should I listen to you?
Mhm.
What have you done? And tell me how it was. Tell me what you did to change that. And then
Mhm.
tell me how it's going now. And instead of telling me, show me, right? Like Wayne Dyer says, like, dance the dance, show people how you're living and be as consistent as possible. And there's ups and there's downs, but that's really how I try to live my life. And it's based off of, being on top of the world 2 different times, being able to say that we were the best hockey team in the world, and being surrounded by extremely high operating men that are self actualizing people that want the truth, the hard truth, and want to support each other,
Mhm.
And so, from those perspectives, can I bring that into what I'm doing now? Can I build a community that has a really good moral compass? And will people listen? So that's really what I try to do. I just try to tell people the truth. I tell people when I go through tough times because that's life. There's
Mhm.
stress and but for the most part, this life is really great. And for a long time after my career, I was very I was stuck in a very bad place of blaming other people and things that happened to me. And luckily, I was saved by nature and by then reaching back into my past and utilizing this mindset of you have to be a little gone, you got to be a little crazy, and you got to really pound a narrative, even if you don't believe it, that you can get better and you can be the best version of yourself. So I just try to show people how to do that and then make them like self-autonomous. Like, this is your life, you should be selfish. And because if you're not, you'll probably lose everything that's around you.
Mm. Yeah, as someone that has almost lost it all, someone who shares, a similar path with you, outside of the NHL, but a higher profile career. Someone who was left to his own devices, someone who had no tools to manage conflict, no tools to manage stress. Grew up without those things, and then at a young age had everything kind of given to you, and people catering to you. I think there are very few people that can identify with what you're talking about, right? Which is, you bring yourself to a point, and this is where we kind of rally a little bit, you and I. You bring yourself to a point where you do all those things growing up, where the path is set for you, whether you're a high profile radio guy or an incredible hockey player. You get drafted in the NHL, the same rules do not apply to you in terms of being able to have to learn about how to do life, how to manage really tough shit, how to say no, how to say yes to the right things, good habits, bad habits, all of those things. And that's kind of where I want to start, if we can.
Mm,
Obviously, you being an advocate for plant medicine, using mushrooms and psilocybin to help bring you from a place where you had severe CTE into a place where you no longer do, bringing you from that darkness into a place where you're light, and
mm.
you've got that smile on your face, and you're celebrating your 40th birthday today at the halfway point, and you got all your teeth, by the way. You look great.
I'm missing one. I'm still missing one.
That's okay. You can do that later.
Uh,
Um, but Talk a little bit about that, because I think that that's a shared reality for a lot of people that find themselves in the situation that you found yourself in, where you had to reach up for help and you said, "Hey, this is enough. I need help, or it's over."
Hmm.
Because it all starts at a young age, right? It starts with the path that you were on to get to where you're going to become as successful as you were, to win a couple of cups in Chicago and be a high profile NHLer.
Mm. Yeah. So, I didn't have many great coping mechanisms when I was younger. My parents did an amazing job raising three boys, but they used the tools at their disposal. And one of them, we had a rule that we'd always have to sit at the table at a certain time. We'd had dinner, and we were a very tight knit family. And every Sunday we went to my grandparents. I don't think I ever missed one, unless obviously I was playing. And you know, but nobody really talked. Like, we weren't emotionally there. We weren't, but it was always a nice notion. And I was always at a young age just very curious about what the heck this all is. And I was always reading, and I was very much enamored by English and books and music, and just really listening and being attentive, because I grew up in a household where I'm a very sensitive person, or an empath, whatever you want to call those traits, where I always felt as though I was a little on edge, and I was a little stuck in that kind of fight mode. So always hyper aware. And it really helped me in hockey. I can look back on my life. These aren't negativisms. These are things that I'm very proud of the person I am and what I've done. And without these things, without some of the suffering, without some of the addictions, without the hazing, without the abuse, I really would not have turned into Car Bomb, and I wouldn't have enjoyed such a long career, and I wouldn't have the platform that I have now, and I wouldn't have gotten sick, and I wouldn't have found mushrooms and then gotten better, and hopefully carrying a message. And I think a lot of people in this life just want to be heard, and they want to find their tribe. And so it's been a very interesting journey. I am very much of the belief that we all have this power within us, and we just need to find it. We
Mm.
need to be around people that can empower us, that don't put us down. When you talk to those people after you get off a call, and you're like, oh, you just feel drained,
Exhausted. Yeah.
that's your gut instinct telling you, guard yourself from that individual or that job or that place. Now, we can sharpen this intuition. And I'm extremely lucky, because hockey is very much reactionary. You do not think logically when you're on the ice. You're moving around at 30 miles an hour, and there's no out of bounds. You're trying not to get your head taken off. There's 10 guys. You're trying to score. It's just such a fast paced game. And that really lends to how I've, been able to really operate and live my life. I was very numb for a very long time. When I was playing, I was very sick. You could see it in the pictures. It's a weird thing. I was well. I was looked at as extremely kind of healthy, as most pro athletes are. But at the end of the day, I've never felt better. And it's been 10 years since I've played professional sports.
Hmm.
Um, and that's simply because it's just so demanding. And, we talk about this kind of blind faith, and this, why do AHL players stay in the AHL, and why do NHL players have long, prolific careers? And it's always said that it's between the ears. It's this vision that you have. It's this it's this never taking no for an answer. And some of us, based off of how we grew up and the things that happened to us, are just better adapted to believing it. And it really comes down to full circle. Your and I don't want to say believe, because that's a learned behavior. It's this knowing. It's you knowing. When I got called up from the AHL, I knew I will never play another game in the AHL. I will play as long as I can in the NHL, and then I will walk away. And that's exactly kind of what happened. And I found myself attracted to and attracting really good teams that wanted me there. Not necessarily because I was, a skill guy, but because I brought something to the table that not a lot of people could. I used my body as a weapon, and I made people feel a certain way in order.
Scared.
Fear, yeah, just, a little on edge, right? And when
Yeah.
you're on edge, you're not fully connected.
Uh-huh.
Everybody's been in this fear-based thinking, if we wanna think about life, and it really robs you of the moment. It robs you of being present. It robs you of the little details that you need to see in hockey and in life in order to be successful.
Mm.
And so, none of this is by coincidence, and when I did retire, I was a shell of myself, and I needed to go through 4 extremely dark years and, miss time with loved ones, family, friends, kids.
Mm.
And luckily, by the grace of nature, and I input nature instead of God, because I believe that I'm born out of this world, not into it, and nature has had such an impact in my life and brought me back to being aware, present, and really sharpening this gut instinct that I have that I use on a daily basis. I don't necessarily, even in the businesses that I've built over the last 5 going on 6 years now, I very much use my gut instinct, my intuition. It's a different type of intelligence than using your logic.
Mm.
Obviously, I think and critically, but you can't bring in enough information in order to make the right decision. So, and I'm okay with a lot of this being out of my control as long as I control my effort,
Mm.
I control how I show up, and I'm hopeful that the universe will reward me with attracting people into my life to get the things that I want done. And quite simply, man, I just I want to be heard. I want to live a happy life. I want to pay my bills by helping people.
Mm. Mm.
Helping people get better.
Mm. Well, you do it all the time. I mean, you live it. That's one of the things that you talk about, and I think you kind of mentioned it here. It's the show me stuff that you do, whether it's the videos you have about being mindful, where you're coming back from a walk, you're encouraging people to be healthy, whether it's information about psilocybin based medicine, plant based medicine that has helped you, whether it's your Experience Onward clinic, which we'll just get to in a second. That's a tough switch for guys that come from an ego driven sport, right? That's a difficult thing for a lot of people to be able to. Someone wishing you a happy birthday. So you're a little
Yeah, my wife's bringing
the baby.
balloons,
Oh,
balloons,
she is.
and yeah.
Look at that smile.
I don't know if you're gonna be able to see him though,
Hi,
because
hi, Mrs. Carcillo. Hello.
say hello, Ella. That's a
That's
big
awesome.
number.
It's
That's a big number.
dude, you're still so young, right? It's all comparative. I'm 51. I look
Yeah.
terrible. You look like you look like you set the clock back. To your point, and let's just take a little quick break.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, there's Unwell Danny,
There it
right?
is. Uh-huh.
And there are worse pictures than that, obviously, but that is Unwell Danny, bags under his eyes. Your hair looks,
Pale.
you got very pale.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what you're on there. Maybe are you opioided there? You drinking
That
there?
that's just, yeah, I think that's like around, that looks like 24, 2025. So my first 5 years in the league, I got hurt a lot. And I pretty much got all of my injuries. And actually didn't get introduced to opiates until I was 24, going on 25.
Mhm.
I had 2 surgeries back to back, and they overprescribed me. And within 3 months, it numbed obviously all the pain, emotional pain, physical pain, but I was dependent on them really quickly. And I definitely have this kind of addictive personality. I know myself, but luckily I knew where to ask for help.
Mm.
And that, like, those opiates taking me down that quickly really showed me a different way of life. At 25, I was able to ask for help with the substance abuse program, and they sent me to a place called the Canyon in Malibu. It's since burned down, not in the recent fires, but the fires about 2 or 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And what I learned there was how to use meditation to scan my body, how I was feeling, how to use, a good organic food. I learned about Indian sweat lodges, where I learned about how to make a gratitude list when you're really in pain,
Mhm.
and how that kind of brings you out of and gives you just a different perspective on your life, even if it's going bad. And so I was able to reconcile with my family. We had like this family weekend that was really cool, and just get in touch with myself, like just who am I, behind my eyes. I always thought I was just this, you're made to believe, this hockey player, but that's just something I do. Like, I'm not even my name, I'm
Mm.
so that was really cool. And then the last 5 years in the league, when I cleaned everything up, I stayed sober for about 2 years, stayed in the AA rooms. I've been sober since 30 from opiates, so almost 10 years. I fell back in when I retired, but 25 to 30, I went to the Stanley Cup finals 4 times with 3 different teams. I was a really good teammate. I was a little bit better to myself, not perfect. And we won twice, lost twice. But that's a testament to, living the right way and having your luck a sure thing,
Mhm.
So I try to do the same thing now.
Mm. Well, the difference is, obviously, and I didn't know that you had a little pit stop, but you knew, at the age of 25, when you reach up and ask for help, you get into those AA rooms, and, you humble yourself in front of that 12-step process with a bunch of normies, right? Where you're like, hey,
No doubt.
it's the great equalizer, right? Or you're like, hey, dude, you and I both have a drinking problem. We're still in the same basement. Our T4 slips, our career earnings don't matter in here. What matters is how you doing today. Like,
Yeah, we're all the same, right?
yeah.
People get so edgy, right? Like, there's been so many hockey players that have gone, and you're like, well, I shouldn't be here. I'm not as bad as that person. That's the immediate thing that you think, right? And
Mhm.
it's less about comparing and more just about, listening. You may not have been as bad, but your life was just as unmanageable,
Mhm.
right? Like, so uh I make sure now, for sure, that I have zero expectations of people. The only expectations that I have are of myself,
Mm.
and I don't want to let myself down, and I think that's really important because uh, you know I just it's not about not trusting people. I think that unreasonable expectations of others, especially if they're not communicated well, even if they aren't, you're not in their head. It's just a tough thing you know, it's a tough way to live your life. So, and if I'm doing the right things every day, then for sure I'm obviously radiating, and I'm going to attract
Mhm.
people that can help level me up. There's going to be people there that still kind of are hanging around, and I'll let
Mhm.
them hang around because, man, I like to be reminded, right? Like, you don't know the good days if you don't have some bad,
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
some friendships are hard to let go of too, right? Some of those old relationships are hard to let go of, and you're like,
for sure.
nostalgia's sake, I'm tough enough to be able to hang with them and not compare
Oh,
myself to them, right?
some people are really good-hearted people.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, I have some really good-hearted people in my life that I'm still very much friends with, but we're not on a similar path, but that's okay. Like, I just know that they're there, and hopefully one day they'll be nice to themselves, and
Mhm.
and then we'll become even closer. But I'm all about the heart, and I've met so many people that throughout my life that I know exactly who I want to let in, and who I used to be very much cut and dry. I don't know if you were like this, where it's like, okay,
Oh, yeah,
no,
I had all the answers, yeah. Yes,
no, or
no,
just
in,
like,
out.
no, no to you, you're
Yeah,
not allowed in,
yep.
and then, okay, I'll let you in. Now it's, okay, I see who you are,
Yeah.
I'll let you in halfway, not gonna let you in all the way. I'll
Mhm.
just keep you at a little bit of a distance. Uh, that's how I'm not so cut and dry anymore.
Mm. Um, but you bring up a good point, right? When you talk about expectations and that that modicum or locus of control that so many people think that they have, which they don't. Like in reality, we really don't control much, right? The chief task in life is to know what you control and know what you do not, and
Uh-huh.
and I live by that. And for us to put our expectations in other people, if you're like me, I'm like, you believe it or not, it's funny, you're car bomb, and I was known as a shock jock for a long time. And I'm like, I'm the biggest softy on the planet. I got a big heart. I feel sorry for people. I don't like seeing people get hurt. I don't like hurting people. I don't like making people unhappy or sad. I like to be liked, like all those things that I had to reconcile with, right? As I got older, where I'm like, okay, I got to leave behind this personality, but to your point, what am I? And is it okay to be that person? Is it okay to allow myself to be that person, to be soft in a moment, to let people in? Because that was protectionary, I think, for guys like us back in the day.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to get your thoughts. It's like, you've got some profile. It almost comes with the territory where people are like, hey, you know what? That guy's badass. He'll tell you to go eat shit, pound salt, whatever the deal is. And he's cut and dry. He's where you stand with him. And it was almost that sense of pride, but it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually that guy. It was this act I was putting on.
Uh-huh.
And then when you let that guard down and you go through 12 step, or you go through therapy, or you do some kind of psychedelic healing journey, or you integrate that into your life, what reveals itself is a very different person, right? That's what
Absolutely.
revealed itself to me. And that's the journey that so many people that transition from, one life, one mindset, and they realize one day at 30, 40 that they're incredibly unhappy. They don't know what it is, but it's the duplicity of self, I
Mhm.
find, where
Yeah.
you're fighting against your own nature, you know?
Yeah. So I heard this quote, we all have 1,000 reputations. Sometimes some of us have 10,000 reputations. I've got, there's hundreds of thousands of followers. And they all think differently of me, and I can't follow them all home and ask them, well, how did I do today? So I think it's just a matter of being comfortable and growing in your own skin and following and having morals and following your moral compass. And we all know what to do. We all know how to treat ourselves. We all know how to treat other people. And sometimes we just get lost, and we need to be reminded, the only way that I know how I'm doing is by talking to you, is by talking to somebody else, is by being heard, watching their reaction to the words that are coming out of my mouth, and then watching their reactions to my actions. So we do need other people in that sense, but you have to be extremely autonomous for the life that you're creating. You are creating it. And you are Wayne Dyer had this quote, this life, we're doomed to make choices, but all of the choices are being made for us at the same time. So you talk about duplicity, take a second to meditate on that, because how do you describe, I was recently in a not so good place. For the first time in like 5 years, I just took too much rest over the holidays. And stagnation is the definition of death to me. And it very much felt like that, consumed with fear and self-doubt and anxieties, and just not being able to do, not being able to execute, not being able to send the email when I knew I had to send it, not being able to get up when I knew I had to get up. Don't eat the thing. I ate the thing. And I was very much in my own way. And luckily I have these tools that I try to implement. And if these tools don't work and they're not working for some time, then I have a medicine that can help me get out of my own way, that can help me become more confident, that can resolve the self doubt, that can turn the negative self talk into positive reinforcement, into that grateful mindset for everything that I have, because this life that I've created is amazing and the kids I have are amazing. And I have to do my best to be as present as possible. And, you know, but at the end of the day, like, I give up my kids, for example, to school. I don't know what's happening there. I just have to have a belief that they're being taken care of, and the way that I know that they are is because I'm taking care of myself. I'm not taking advantage of people. I'm not being predatory. I am trying to add value to my own life and to the lives of others. And if we do these things in a habitual manner, I do
Mhm.
believe that this universe is going to reward me. That being said, I've been doing it for 6 years and I haven't felt rewarded other than like, man, I get messages all the time of like how some of my things have impacted people positively, and that's reward enough. And yeah, it's this life is a very interesting journey. And I think back to like scoring a goal in the NHL. There are so many things that are out of my control. I don't know how my four teammates are going to show up on that shift. I don't
Mm.
know if the defenseman on the other team's going to hit a rut or not and keep the puck in or out. Like there's just so much that and so what can you control? Your effort, how you show up, your discipline,
Intention.
following this compass.
Yep.
And so that's where I try to put all of my attention now, is into those things, doing the right thing.
Is that is it, you didn't think like that obviously when you were playing, right?
Oh, no, dude, I was gonna come take your fucking head off. Can we swear on this?
Fuck yeah, I don't know. More the merrier.
No,
I'm
man.
happy.
My job was to make you as uncomfortable as possible. And I like from a very young age, like I really liked the physical part of I really like the mental part, the verbal part of looking across the ice, looking into somebody's eyes and seeing them look off to the right and like, oh, all right. Like I got you,
Who did
you
you
know.
like? Who was the easiest? Like whose head did you love getting into? Where you're like this? I can't wait to play this team because I know I can run this guy's show. I know I can do it.
There's not one particular person. But if I had to choose a subset of people, it would be the Europeans, it would be, the skill guys whose job wasn't their job is to put the puck in the net,
Yeah, they
right?
shut up and play, right? They're not.
My
They don't have game like you have game.
No, my job is to get you to think about me instead of Kaner, get you to think about me instead of Taves and Hossa. Make sure that I'm in the game. And if you fuck around, I am coming over those boards. I'm not coming after you. I will fuck up your best player. Just stay in line, right? There's this unspoken, which is in the NHL now, you can see that line is blurred because
Mm.
they've gotten rid of a role where guys, they just knew I'm not going to mess around this game. And I knew it too. When there was like Darcy Hordachuk on the other side, Radius Ivanis, Derek Dorsett, these like guys that are going to answer the bell if I fucked around, it would keep me in line and I'd play a more honest game. When I knew that those guys weren't there and nobody was going to answer the bell, oh my gosh, those were the best. So it's not one particular person but those were the best nights, when you can just run rampant.
Yeah, but was that it's counterintuitive, not counterproductive? Was that counterproductive to your nature, even though you loved it?
So you talked about personas earlier. When I got
Yeah.
to the rink, I was a different person.
You had a
I am
switch. You're like,
I'm
I know what I am. I used to say that to
not,
myself all the time. I'd go to the radio station. I'd overlook the city of Toronto. I'm like, I am the best at this. No one is better.
dude,
I
you
am
were
this. I
great.
am that.
Let
Thanks,
me
buddy.
just say, let me stop here and just
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
like, you were very much a part of the fabric of what I listened to growing up.
Oh,
You
thank
know,
you.
yeah, Q102, MTV, like Much Music, like you guys were all amazing, like Strombo and
Oh, yeah,
so
Georgie.
yeah, let me just say that. Or
Thanks,
let me
bud.
just say that, yeah. So um I forgot the question. Where were we going before that?
We were talking about that being counterintuitive to your nature, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah. I'm like you. I'm sensitive. I read. I like, just grabbing my kids and hugging them. I am very much connected. I want to see people do well, but the environment that I grew up in was conducive for building this Dawg in me, and I still have it. Like, and I want it there because
Do you fight it? Do you fight that part of
no,
yourself
no, not
anymore? Or
at
you
all.
accept it?
No, it's just there. If I need to use it when people are taking advantage and I've warned them a couple times, then I'll use it. I don't hit people anymore, but they know I'll find leverage and I'll know where to push buttons, right? And I'll just basically nicely say stop, you know. But it's a nice thing to walk into a room to know that you can handle yourself.
Mm.
It's it's that saying, Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, I'm sure you've heard it before. You'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Like, you just need to have it, and then you don't be arrogant about it. You don't carry yourself like, that people can even know. You be silent, right? I was always the silent guy. I was always the guy in the corner. I'm not very social, believe it or not, right? I am an introvert.
Mm.
I don't like a lot of people. I in my life, I don't. I've got so much that I need to take care of and that I want to do, that selfishly, I keep my circle very, very tight. But no, that was very much a part of me. It still is. I'm very proud of it because I trained it. And if you want to bark, I mean, I can bark and then I can bite, or I can just walk away too,
Yeah.
right? I'm very careful because, there's a saying, if you want revenge, dig two graves, right? So, like, that part of me's in me, but I don't entertain it every day. When I do entertain it, was like last night when I was up. I did a 17-hour day yesterday, just emails and working, and that's how the dog comes out. Now.
That's how you channel it into
Mhm.
that
Into the
productive,
work.
guy that is doing the work that you're doing with a clinic,
Mhm.
with webinars,
Mhm.
advocacy, the business of psychedelics,
Yep.
that kind of stuff. That's
Multitasking,
yeah, but
critically
a lot of people,
thinking, problem solving.
but a
Yep.
lot of see what happens. I find I could be wrong, but I'd love your thoughts. What happens is I think a lot of people that transition from a place where you were, and this is really the word duplicity is the one thing that I find so many people that have addiction issues, people who have drug and alcohol problems, people who have issues with self-awareness. There's this shame attached to catering to or thinking about the person that they used to be that became that alcoholic, or in your case that drug addict or that opioid addict, in my case an alcoholic. All of the things that went into shameful behavior because you needed a way to cope with the person that you were, and you didn't really have any coping mechanisms. And so you look back on it, but once you get past a certain point in your wellness journey, it's an amazing thing because I'm hearing it kind of come out in your conversation about that dog still being in you. Is you still have that person. I used to be Dean 1.0, used to be Dan 1.0, and then you
Yeah.
became Dan 2.0, and then you sort of settle into Dean or Dan 1.5, right? Where you're like, all right, now listen, I value the person that I was. There's no shame about that individual that I used to be that needed to change to become a happy person, to be able to do life and experience joy. And then you kind of go to the other end of the pendulum, right? Where you're like, oh, namaste. I'm gonna
No.
all that
No.
stuff.
There's no woo-woo here. Yeah, I might, position some woo-woo concepts,
Yeah.
or like philosopher-like concepts like like, I think the one thing that is missed in this industry, if you want to call it a psychedelic industry of healing, you need grit. You
Mm.
need discipline. You need those things. You need those characteristics in order to turn your life around. You need your radar system strong,
Mm.
and the way that you do that is by consistently getting up and showing up for yourself. By exercising, you need to move your body. If you think you're going to feel good by just ingesting something, you're wrong. You need to watch what you're putting in your body. If you're going to gunk up all the connectors, then you're going to end up living somebody else's life and not your own.
Mm.
You need grit. Like, that you have to have it. That's what's missing in kind of this whole woo woo spirituality. You need to be responsible and autonomous for your life. I've seen so many people take this medicine and then leave their life, leave their loved ones. You need to take ownership for the things that you've created.
Mm.
And, you know, you have to be, there's a responsibility. And what does responsibility mean? If you break it down, it's your ability to respond. So how well can you respond to when things are going badly? Everybody has great days, right? It's the days that no, you don't want to get up. It's the days that you're sore. It's the days that maybe your partner that you're working with just does not get it, and you're trying to tell them for the 10th time. These are the days that you need to really lean on your tools. And the tools are quite simple. And if you don't believe them, right, if you don't believe the story that you're telling yourself, tell yourself another story
Mm.
and then tell it again the next day, tell it again for 7 days, and then something will shift. And if it can't shift, then let medicine tell you, right?
Mm.
Go have a lived experience in an altered state of consciousness where it can show you the roadmap, and then it can make things easier to execute. Like right now, I'm 8 days removed from my last ceremony, and I feel absolutely connected and invincible. There's no fear-based thought patterns. When I think of doing something, or when I feel that I need to do something, I just do it. There's no, but if you do that, this will happen. There's no self-doubt. There is this
There's no
light.
crippling litigation that goes on in your mind where, if, like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, where
Of
you're like,
course,
I should
yeah.
really go do this. I should really send that email.
The inner dialogue, the
And then you start
logic.
going, what if they don't email me back? Maybe I'm
Ah,
a failure. And you
just
start
do it.
questioning yourself. Yeah, yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
make the post.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to increase followers on social media? Then you need to detach yourself from the outcome. You
Mm.
want to live a good life? You need to detach yourself as much as you can from the outcome of what you're trying to do. And that being said, if you think that you're going to go to the gym and do some bicep curls for a week and you're going to have jacked biceps, that's not the way things work. You have to do it for up to 6 months or a year, right? You have to habitually do these things. You have to habitually put yourself in this mindset, and then you have to execute
Mm.
on a large scale, right? You know, we live in this world where we're looking at people and they're super successful, like, but nobody looks back to like when Joe Rogan was doing his podcast after he went on the Tom Green show and nobody knew about it. Like, the guy just signed $100 million deal after he was doing it for 3 decades, 30
Yeah.
years. Think about that.
Yeah.
Professional athletes don't turn pro for some of us. So let's just take hockey for example. 18, you're drafted, and then if you're good enough, and usually 20 years. So
Did you see that dude in Detroit, 31, 9 years in the A, finally got a shot with Detroit last night? Did you see
that's
that?
it, man. And he's got that
Incredible.
blind faith. He's still
Yeah.
digging, I guess, things that are worth it, um, just take time. Everything takes time,
Hmm.
and so don't get discouraged. Again, this is where that tribe comes in, right? You gotta find people that are on the same path as you,
Yeah.
because it's hard to change your life. But there's tools that can help accelerate it. I view fungi and medicine in these ceremonies as an accelerant. It's a catalyst.
Hmm.
And then, well, Daniel still had to put the 16-hour day in and do the 180 or so emails. I still had to do that. It just makes it so much easier.
Mm. I appreciate you bringing that up, and I want to get into your journey with psychedelics, because we've got your obviously backstory, and I'm sure we'll podcast again and talk about wellness. We'll talk about how bad it was, how good it is, what happened, all the things that go into an AA meeting, and sharing and doing a testimonial, how it was, how it is, and how it what happened, right? So, but I want to talk about psychedelics because you tried everything. I mean, you've tried to cope with alcohol. You tried to cope with opioids. You got clean from that. You rebounded, went back in or went out, depending on, the colloquialism you want to use to talk about drinking or doing drugs again. Um, but one of the most fascinating turnarounds I've seen, and you were kind enough to share with the world when you were sort of going through it and you started to experience some relief, was interacting with mushrooms, interacting with psilocybin, and that has completely changed the course not just of your life, changed the course of your relationships, and has become not just a passion either. It's a business, it's a hobby, and it's something that you've completely gone into. So how do you go from coping with narcotics and alcohol to effectively, I don't want to say curing, but you've used the word curing yourself with psilocybin?
Yeah, no,
Where was the catalyst? What happened?
I'm definitely cured. And
I
I'll take
love hearing you say that because
oh,
you know
it's
what? People in addiction circles, they often say you can't say you're a recovered alcoholic. They can't say you're cured from, depression, anxiety, CTE, all those things. And I see that
yeah.
sneaky grin on your face. So I'm
Well,
really happy you're saying that.
if uh if somebody's telling you what to do and that they have it figured out, don't listen. Like, that's a huge red flag for me.
Mhm.
And so that's what happened to me. I got out of the league in 2015. I was diagnosed with early onset dementia. I was diagnosed with CTE like symptoms, even though it can't be definitively diagnosed until they take your brain out. This is at the height of, the NFL concussion lawsuit. The NHL was the lawsuit was just, did they hide information? Absolutely. Uh, but I was advocating for everything that was wrong. So I was stuck in this kind of negative mindset and loop for 4 years. I spent $500,000 of my own money over the course of those 4 years. I went to stroke rehabilitation, concussion centers. I did holistic treatments like cranial sacral, self deprivation or float tanks, hyperbaric chambers. I went to LA and let a beautiful little Chinese old lady stick needles all over my head and body to kind of get everything moving again and flush out inflammation. It's a moxibustion acupuncture. You name it, I did it, and I was still suffering with 15 symptoms, right? With slurred speech, headache, head pressure, insomnia, impulse control issues, light sensitivity, auditory sensitivity, short and long term memory loss, appetite loss, weight loss, on top of anxiety, depression, and then eventually suicidal ideation when you think that there's no more hope.
Hmm.
There's a reason that the number one cause of death after a TBI is suicide, because it's so there's so little known about the brain, and then there's so little known about this myriad of symptoms. And so in you have to invest money in order to get knowledge. So I view, and I still view that, like, I could shame and guilt myself for oh, you wasted 500 grand, but I didn't, because I learned about the brain, I learned about the body, and then I started to learn about the spirit once I did this journey in 2019.
Mhm.
So I saw this study. So this is 2015. In 2017, I read this study that it was from the Imperial College of London. It's the brain, the placebo brain on psilocybin. And I watched these connections. I'm like, whoa, I just had this thought. I'm like, that might work. And then I put it away. I tried, to stay on the same path that I was on, going a little bit more natural. But in 2019, I reached my breaking point where these dark suicidal thoughts were really creeping in. I was like, and it really scared me, because at the time I had 3 beautiful, healthy young kids. I had money in the bank. I had a roof over my head. I had a car. But I wanted to leave this life. And so a former teammate reached out, because it started to get really dark on social media. I wear everything on my sleeve. And he
Mhm.
said, "Hey, I think that this could work for you." I said, "What?" He's like, "Mushrooms containing psilocybin." I said, "Great. I'm coming to the farm." This guy was also growing CBD, which is a patented neuroprotectant. It's patented by the US government, the only patented neuroprotectant on earth. People should go check that patent out. Guards against neurodegenerative disease and cell degradation. And so I was like, all right. I got on the flight. I almost didn't, right? That kind of, because sometimes people get it to a point where they, are comfortable in their sickness, where they go to the party and they mess up, and then people are like, oh, that's Dan. He's just sick. He's been hit in the head too many times. Um, and so, I was being told that this is your new normal. But I
Well,
was
plus you're living
graduating.
in fear, right? And so you're in that fear state, and you've had so many letdowns from treatment before. And some guy goes, "Hey, why don't you come and experience this thing?" You're like, "Really?
Yeah.
Again?"
I'm
Right?
doing it to myself, right? Like,
Yeah.
again, like, the thoughts that we think are so powerful,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so but I took this invitation. I did 5.6 grams. This isn't the way that I advocate for it, but they surprised me with it when I got
You
there.
went to the moon, so to speak.
Well, I was like, they're like, we're gonna do this mushroom ceremony for you. When I got there, it was
Yeah.
early in the day. I'm like, okay, what time? They're like, let's get a 4 or 5 hour fast in because that's important. And I'm like, all right, well, chill out. Let me go get a pack of smokes and some beer. And I was in the country, and they're like, no, that's not what this is. This
Oh,
is
you
this.
thought it was a bit of a get together
Oh
too,
yeah,
did you?
I thought it was like, yeah, let's party. Uh, where are the woods? Where's the keg?
Yeah,
Let's drink
where's
it.
your kegger, guys?
And
Let's
so I said, okay, well, I'm here I came here, I took this invitation because I want to get better.
Mhm.
So I'll basically take whatever you guys give me.
Mhm.
And so I didn't realize that it would, nobody prepared me that, hey, this is going to exasperate what's at the forefront of your mind. This could be difficult. You may need support.
The climb won't be fun, dude.
Yeah, or like just you have to use your breath to control. Try to stay in curiosity as opposed to that fear and fighting it. And man, did I fight it! So like my whole body was rejecting it, and I think that goes back to the vision of that I was comfortable being sick. And but eventually, after an hour and a half of being stuck in this negative loop of not knowing where I was. It was a new farm, and this negative thought pattern, which was very indicative of my life. I was waking up. I was advocating by highlighting everything that was negative. I was attracting all this stuff. And then after an hour and a half of like going inside to outside, I was like, "What is this?" Just kind of like screaming. This guide put his hand on my shoulder, and I was just like, "Oh, that feels nice." And I just kind of sat there, and then all of a sudden this voice came in, and it said, you have the power to stop this. You can change your life, and you can begin advocating for other people and be an example of how to get better.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay. Like I kind of talked back to it because in the ceremony you can talk to the medicine and ask it to be like more gentle, ask it for knowledge. And I said, okay, I don't want to live this way. And if you can help me, I'm in. And as soon as I said that in my head, poof, like it let me go,
Mm.
and we walked inside, and it was bliss. It was the way I describe it is that I felt unconditionally loved, enveloped in this orange and warm light for the next hour and a half. Similar to when I like grab my kids and hug them, this thing that we forget because life is difficult, life is hard. And then I woke up the next day, and I describe it as feeling the way I should. I felt like I was Dan from King City that I was 15 before I took all the big hits and got so disconnected and the abuse, etc. And then I went outside. I didn't need my sun blockers. I called my wife. She's like, "Holy shit, you're not slurring your words. Your eyes look completely different." This is all within a 14-hour period. And I was just dumbfounded. And then for the next 2 weeks, I'd say 70 to 80% of my symptoms fell off, either gone, completely gone, or lessened in intensity. And, I had a washout period of about 3 weeks, and then I microdosed because nothing gets fixed in 5 hours. I knew that.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to give myself this exposure. I took diagnostics before I left from the clinics, brain scans, QEEG. It measures the electrical waves of your brain, how it's communicating. So this theta, beta, alpha, these waves, gamma. And then I took blood work, and then I had tons of abnormalities. 6 months later, I went back to the same clinic, and they were dumbfounded. Like, "What did you do?" I said, "I did mushrooms, and I exercised and watched my diet, and I had no abnormalities in my brain. Blood work was completely clear. I had the free testosterone of a 72-year-old male. So mushrooms stimulate the pituitary gland, and just they get everything moving again, the mind, body, and the spirit. It's the only it. This is, I truly believe, one of the only ways that you can reconcile yourself.
Mm.
That you can literally just take this in a very controlled setting, lie there for 4 or 5 hours, watch your life, figure out these problems in an altered state of consciousness, come back to your body, and then all of a sudden your body's working the way it's supposed to. It's phenomenal. And that's why it works for so many indications. There's 2 FDA breakthrough therapy designations right now for treatment-resistant depression and major depressive disorder with 2 companies. There's 25 states that have some sort of legislation moving forward research into psilocybin. There's 2 adult therapeutic use states, Colorado and Oregon. There's 32 cities and states that have decriminalized this in America. There are over 180 FDA-approved clinical trials with the same substance. You sit there and you ask yourself, how is that possible? How can it treat PTSD, smoking cessation, addiction, end-of-life anxiety, depression, OCD, eating disorder? How? And it's because it gives you exactly what the individual needs and is asking for, and that's why intention, setting that, is really important. So, these medicines have been around 10,000 years, a hell of a lot longer than 100 years that the FDA has been pushing their synthetic medicine through these white coats and through these insurance companies. So they're illegal for a reason. And what I'll say is, I'll get off my soapbox. Wake up if you're listening to this, right? If you're suffering and you're hearing this message and you're still doing the same thing, there is a way out. And we have the 13th legal mushroom facility open in the United States. And we do everything very carefully. It's called Experience Onward. Onward because we need to move forward and we're trying to get people unstuck. And so if you're suffering, go to the website, hit the contact info. I will be the one emailing you. Work it daily, and I know that we can get you better.
ExperienceOnward.com. That's the name of the clinic that you just opened up a couple of months ago in Oregon, correct?
Yes, sir. Portland, Oregon.
Yeah. And Portland's fairly open-minded when it comes to this. Portland and Colorado now, and I think there's been some really great state legislation in both of those states. And if anybody's looking for the website, Dan lives it. I mean, it's right there. Former NHLer Dan Carcillo discusses head trauma and treatment in the Players Tribune. That was a wonderful article. I mean, you wear your heart on your sleeve and you put your money where your mouth is, putting this clinic together to help people in situations like you've been in, like I've been in, like so many people have been in, where they need that reset. They need to encourage their brain to be a little more flexible. They don't understand how those neurotransmitters need networks and new networks, and how they narrow over time. And I think if you go on these learning journeys as you've been on, and anybody who's been desperate, because I think this comes from a place of desperation for a lot of people. At least it did for me. My psilocybin weekend, which I talked about in the Field Trip Health podcast, where we're talking about ketamine-assisted psychotherapy with my friend Dr. Mario, who
He's great.
Yeah, he's awesome. I mean, these guys are on the tip. But the way that we look at mushrooms is very much through the lens of, them being this, illegal thing or this spiritual thing. And, we look at the high that you go on because you trip. I mean, that's what it is. But people don't understand what that trip means, what it does, and why when so many people do it in a recreational setting, they feel really great for like 3, 4, 5 days after, maybe even 2 weeks, right? Specifically according to how much you do. And they're like, oh, it's just mushrooms. They make you feel great. Well, yeah, but do you understand what's going on? To your point, it takes you out of that negative thought process. It puts you literally above your own mind and removes that idea that, your thinking brain and your feeling brain should be working together. It literally separates those two things. So you can actually look at yourself from a perspective of objectivity. It makes things so much less scary. And it not just doesn't make things less scary, but it makes you emotional. Like you say, you talk about waking up the next day. I woke up the next day after mine and I had tears coming out of my eyes because it was the first day in years I'd woken up without dread. Where you wake up and you're like, there's no purpose again today. I don't want to be here.
This again.
Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so I think it's really important how we communicate it. If you're somebody that goes to the doctor that wants to partake in insurance and those sorts of things, great. I mean, I could show you FDA approved trials and Compass is in phase 3 with the FDA. That means they've passed 1 and 2 and it's safe and efficacious. Phase 3 is just about getting more numbers of people to do the treatment. They pick treatment-resistant depression, which is existential dread, and you want to end your life because you've tried more than 3 treatments. That's how you qualify for being TRD. I could show you the Johns Hopkins studies of smoking cessation and end-of-life anxiety. what I tell people is like, if this takes away 80% of people's end of life anxiety, which is a pretty anxious thing to think about, imagine what it can do for you or for depression. So go to Johns Hopkins and look at the research. Go to mushroomreferences.com. There's other great mushrooms too that just don't send you on a trip. But this trip is, you really do get to peek behind the veil,
Mm.
and if you've ever wondered or had the thought of deja vu and I've been here before, or thought of somebody and then they text you, this is the kind of unified field that I'm talking about, that you get more connected to. That's the world. That's source. That is my God. That is, I don't have a higher power. It's right here. It's right here, right now. And the more I do this medicine, the more I'm connected to it, and the more decisions I make that they turn out to be right. And it's just easier to make them, And so,
Did you
you
get?
want to?
Can I ask you a question? Did you get?
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you? Because this, my experience, maybe the coolest part of my experience, is I could see music.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. People report that a lot.
I could, and the other part which I loved is I remember grabbing my phone and I'm like 6 hours into this thing because I think I did 7.1, like that.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah, it was a really good one. Yeah. And I'm typing and I'm looking at my fingers and they have orange tails to them. Like
Oh
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
oh,
I've heard
yeah.
of that. I've heard of like golfers seeing the trail of the ball. I do it with eye shades a lot, and so it's very much internal. But I go, there's a couple ways to do it, right? You can leave your body behind with a high enough dose and the right guide, and then go travel. And you're still, that it's you, but it's basically your consciousness just kind of leaving. Wayne Dyer says, he said in a talk one time, his mom died, but if you weighed his mom a minute before she died and a minute after, same weight, but she's not there anymore. So where does that part go? Right? Because it's two separate things for sure. So you get to feel that, and you get to move with that part. And that's why people ask me, well, why do you continue to do it? First of all, it's a potent neuro-anti-inflammatory. I'm able to pick and be more creative and grab language from, I don't know where it comes from anymore. And I'm really interested in exploring now my consciousness and trying to, I'm never going to answer the question, but you get the feeling. It's the knowing, and the knowing doesn't come or the knowings are lived experiences in an altered state or not, and they come with confidence. They come with unshakable, unequivocal confidence and no doubt. Beliefs, religion, school, etc. This is why I don't listen to academics, right? Like academia, you read it in a book, like you didn't live it. Let's listen to people that lived it. Let's listen to people that have gone through it, because these belief systems comes with doubts because you learned it. Somebody's telling you it. You didn't actually go through it. So I think that's why these experiences are so powerful.
Yeah, well, and plus, I mean, it's if you know anything about mushrooms, you know anything about how long they've been around, that they'll continue to be around. They'll be the only thing that'll be around, no matter
Yeah.
how long this planet has existed. They're really this perfect organism that is able to communicate through this layer through the ground that people don't understand, telling trees what to do, telling animals what to do. They're the only organism. It's not a you have to call it an organism because it's not really a plant, right? And it's not
Yeah.
really an animal. And it kind of has its own classification that way, which we're still trying to understand. And if you follow Paul Stamets, which I think he's phenomenal. Stamets, sorry, I think he's phenomenal. And you dig into this, because if you have an experience in the world of mushrooms, you're like, why does this work? I need to learn about the plant, the genealogy, how long it's been around, what it does, and if you truly understand that, or which I don't think people do either, but I do understand what it does. It's this, it's an experience that you're having with, for a lack of a better term, to not get too woo woo, with billions of years of evolution.
Absolutely. Well,
Right.
I mean, man, I wrote something, and the title is like, I use mushrooms, but they're for sure using me.
Mm.
It is this intelligence that it gives you, and I am like my skin is, buzzing when I talk about it right now, right? Like my brain is buzzing, right? And they're like, we're so happy. Like I'm giving them life, right? Like, and these are
Yeah.
living organisms, but like right now they are living, right? They are helping me. And we'll end, I do have to get going, but we need to do this again. I'll end on this. I'm going to post something tomorrow about the neuronal network that they've been able to film of the brain and it firing, and then how that compares to the mycelium network of the universe, and even the celestial, how the planets are put together. Like, it all looks the same. Tree roots look exactly the same as our nervous system. There is so much evidence out there that supports the theory. And the thing about it is, I'll tell people, or I try to tell people, you don't need somebody to believe something that you're saying in order for you to believe it. You don't need to give them the evidence, right? Like, I feel like neuroscience is trying to explain everything, but at the end of the day, they know 10% about what's going on. So why are we listening to them so much? Just do the things that make you feel good, and you'll live a good life.
Dan Carcillo, I wanted to quickly touch on something before I let you go.
Sure.
That's the resources services available, of course, at Experience Onward. It's in Oregon. Go to experienceonward.com. There's a contact section, resources. You can learn about Dan, and you can get in touch with him. I believe just on that website, you're going to be the guy responding to those emails as well. But where else can we get in touch with you? Not just about Onward Clinic, some of your advocacy. I know you do a bunch of webinars, tons of learning seminars for people that you just openly invite into your universe. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so go to experienceonward.com, go down to the type form, click contact, and then, give me your name, email, and phone number, and then I'll email you. Or you can just email me directly. It's at the bottom of the website. You can reach out to me on Instagram, Daniel Carcillo 13. Twitter is Carbomboom 13. LinkedIn, I'm there. Facebook, I'm there. And you can also reach out to me on danielcarcillo.com. You can, book a consultation and a call. We have some supplements that I've used to my advantage for 6 years. You don't just have to do the high dose. There's low dose therapy that has been really good for people, and people see a pretty good step forward. So all of those places, and hopefully on this podcast again.
Well, we're going to do this again because
this
is just the can opener, Danny.
It's a good one.
Just the can. Yeah. Not a bad little rip, right? For a couple of guys, just a couple of dudes.
Just a couple fellas doing their thing.
Happy birthday, dude. Happy 40th. Go and spend it with your family. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
I will. Thanks, Dean.
Okay, pal. Take care. Dan Carcillo, mental health advocate. Big fan of mushrooms. Cure to CTE, depression, anxiety, all those things with psilocybin. I'm on a trip about this whole thing, everybody. In case you haven't, our last 2 podcasts have been about psychedelic assisted therapies. And it's a weird space, right? And the reason why it's a weird space is because you're kind of swimming against conventional ideas. You're swimming against experts, and take nothing away from experts. I know how Danny feels about certain experts in certain capacities, but those are the same experts that overprescribed him all kinds of opioids and sent him down the river. So, you have to understand where my interest and everybody's interest in self-healing comes from. And I think if you understand that it comes from a place of necessity, need, want to feel healthy, happy, to experience joy, to feel, those things for a first time again. And I think there are a lot of people that can identify with that. Being able to share some of the people that I trust in this space and some of the influencers in this space that I know you can trust, that aren't in it for themselves. They're in it to share their knowledge. They're in it because they want you to be happy and healthy, just like they're happy and healthy. I would highly encourage you to continue to look out for yourself, advocate for yourself. And these are very safe plants. They come from the earth, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll get into ayahuasca at another time too. Not something I've done. I haven't done ayahuasca. But I'm into trying to figure out what those triggers are for a lot of different people, specifically for myself, because it works for me. Psychedelics worked for me. Psychedelics continue to work for me, whether it be microdosing, whether it be a macro dose, whether it be a treatment weekend or a ceremony, as they call it. There are lots of different pieces of information available to anybody who's truly interested in getting a result if they're treatment resistant, getting a result if they are tired of not having one, trying to understand themselves a little bit better and letting this medicine work. And I'm not woo woo. You know me. I'm not a very spiritual cat. You know how I feel about religion, specifically organized religion. But I can tell you that the compounds work. I can tell you it is a spiritual experience. I can tell you that it is life changing and perspective changing. And I can tell you that there are good organizations and people out there like Dan at Onward Clinic, like my friends over at Field Trip Health. This is obviously brought to you by our friends at fieldtriphealth.ca as well. Ketamine assisted therapy, along with MDMA and psilocybin assisted therapy, aligning myself with the kind of people that you want to align yourself with when you want to bring a message of hope to people who are trying to get better. And there's no one better in the business than my friend Dan at Onward Clinic, Dan Carcillo, former NHLer, and of course, Dr. Mario Nucci, and my friend Ian Rubery, the CEO, who are continually ringing the bell for people who have a very difficult time with SSRIs, or sort of at the end of their rope, and truly want to look for alternative treatments that don't have the side effects that certain pharmaceuticals do. So, highly encourage you to look at fieldtriphealth.ca. Check them out today if you're in Canada, locations across Canada. Their services are phenomenal, and they're here to help you get better quicker, for longer, with less side effects. And of course, Dan at Onward Clinic, if you're in the United States, specifically in Oregon, Dan can help. He should be a phone call of yours. Again, go to experienceonward.com and go to the bottom, and you can do the uptake form, which I believe is the intake form, not the uptake form, intake form. Anyway, thanks, Dan. And thank you all for listening. Really appreciate you taking time. You can get everything we do at crier.co, Crier Media. Again, crier.co. You can also find this podcast anywhere you get your fine podcasts, Spotify and Apple specifically. Dean Blundell Show. You can go to YouTube, Dean Blundell Show on YouTube, Crier Media on YouTube as well. Go and rate, subscribe. I really appreciate that. Share this podcast with anybody who you think might need the help or might need a better understanding of who they are. And maybe there's an opportunity for them to help. And if you have any questions, you can always get a hold of me, Dean at crier.co, or info at crier.co. I'm always happy to answer emails as well. Have a wonderful day. Be good to yourself. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.